Welcome to the Halal Fantasy Football League weekly recap. Today we are covering, I think it's week 13. Let's just make sure we're right. Yes, week 13. Let's just get into it. I'm pretty busy these days, and so I'm going to try to make these quick. I won't be able to splice in as many clips as I normally do, but it's getting interesting. So let's just get to it. Let's work backwards. Super Mariota versus James Swag Team. This was kind of this was a game that's important for James because it keeps him in the playoff hunt, and he dominated, and I think he had the high score of the week. For Brad, it was a tough one. Knox didn't give him anything. Myers was pretty pedestrian. Mariota only 12.98. Garrett Wilson did pretty good. Garrett Wilson has been a revelation lately. And then Justin Wilson only had 0.4. James had 4.22. Matt Gay had a big kicking game, 16.10. And the Philadelphia D had 11.2. Off the bench, Gallup had a pretty good game, 16.3. But really it didn't matter. Oh yeah, look, Drake London's back too. 12.5. It's just not enough to beat James. If you just take a look at he had the second lowest score of the week, and he went up against the guy with the highest score of the week for James. James just really dominated. It wasn't going to be this high until this evening with Tom Brady just going off, scoring 2 touchdown passes at the very end, and securing the win. But if you look at James' scores, the ones that really carried him were Tyreek Hill, 25.10, Christian McCaffrey, 26.3, Brian Robinson, and respectable, 14.2. Really good floor guy. As you can see, he has 21 rushing attempts. Brandon Ayuk only had 7.1, but CeeDee Lamb also had a good game, 18.1. But the one that really separated him was this kicker, Michael Badgley from Detroit, scoring 23.4. So that kind of like separated him from everybody else in the leagues. Yeah, Michael, the Money Badger, Badgley. That was an awesome game though. That Detroit Jaguar game, that was fun to watch. The Seattle, 9.2. And then off the bench, Jones looked like he just was under Tom Brady, and everyone else was of no consequence. But his starters were just solid. So if James can make the playoffs, he has a lot of potential with his starting lineup right now. The bench is a little bit sketchy, but his starters can definitely carry. Next up is Hurt So Good versus Daddy Danny Melch team. This is a critical playoff matchup because they were both 6-6 and in the hunt. I think currently prior to this week, they were both borderline. Like, I think Mike was in the playoffs and Gary wasn't. And the only reason why the tiebreaker was the points for, and then it was a separation of literally 40 points. It's that close. But in this case, Gary pulls out the win for this one, having a pretty strong game. For Mike, he had a really good game from Jalen Hurts, 37.8. Keenan Allen has been pretty steady since coming back from injury, 17.8. Carter had 6.38. And Latavius Murray only had 9.8. Leonard Fournette. Towards the end, after that really slow start of a Monday night game, he started picking it up. Leonard Fournette was able to get him double digits. Everyone else single digits. Kelsey only 6.6. MVS only 8.1. Buckhorn only 6.1. Minnesota D only 5.8. And then off the bench, Curtis Samuel had double digits, 11.9. James Robinson looks like, I don't know, he got traded into a worse situation because now he's, even with Breece Hall gone, well, he was traded there after Breece Hall was hurt. Michael Carter goes down. James Hall only gets 1.4. So there's someone else taking over that backfield. We'll look at him later. Mike Williams is still hurt. Tyler Giorni 6.2. Young Hae Koo was the better kicker today, 15.4, and Tennessee had a negative 1.4. Yeah, they got really shut down today. And then for Gary, he went with Mike White, the guy that they all believed in, and he was okay. I mean, he had a lot of yardage and a bunch of interceptions, but he did have a rushing touchdown, so his score was definitely respectable. Davante Adams, so the tables have turned. 33.7. He is wide receiver 1 this week. So if Gary can make the playoffs, with Derrick Henry trending on the downside and Davante Adams trending up, who knows? Gary may have the last laugh. We'll see. Christian Watson has been one of the best late season pickups because he's a touchdown machine, 23 points. Ramondre Stevenson, 11.8. Jones, you played the wrong Green Bay running back, 8.4, because A.J. Dillon had 21.2. I think he may have gotten hurt. Not sure. Mark Andrews only 7.5. Treylon Burks had a nice catch. I guess it was his single catch. A catch for a touchdown, and he got like knocked out of the game, literally. Went into concussion protocol because he caught the ball, got smacked really hard in the face, and he was on the ground and then didn't come back. York had 12.5, and the Tampa Bay D tonight had 3.8. It was a really up and down weird game. And then off the bench, we already mentioned Dillon, but Gabe Davis only had 8.5, Kirk Cousins only 14.2, Moreau 3.7, and Aaron Rodgers 15.78. But other than that, being carried with Davante Adams and Christian Watson, they're looking good, and this is a step closer to the playoffs. Mike isn't completely eliminated, but Gary is sitting pretty. He will either make the playoffs or be in this 4 or 5 way tie to try to figure out who is based on who scores the most points. So the points are critical down the stretch. Next up, Brownsville Jets versus riding with Mahomes. This game had no consequence for the playoffs because I think at this point Mike B was eliminated. Aaron is just fighting for top seeds, and this was a funky game because it was like, if you look at Mike's scores, 1.74 from Lamar Jackson, Deebo Samuel 9.7, DPJ pretty good, 15.34, Eckler, you expect more than that, 12.7, Kareem Hunt only 9.3, Higbee only 2.4, Kenyon Drake only 6.3, and then a pretty good kicker game, I guess, 12 points. So how did he lose? Especially early on, I was like, when Lamar Jackson went down, and then there's a big question mark where he's going to be out week to week. You're like, you just penciled in Aaron for the win. But as you can see by means of the final score, that wasn't the case, and it's because of Cleveland's D just killing it. They had 30.8 points, 2 interceptions, 2 fumble recovers, 2 defensive touchdowns, 1 return touchdown, and then the other ancillary points to help contribute to that made for a huge game. So even though Deshaun Watson didn't do that great and was super rusty, they were able to pull out the win, I think largely because of their defense. So that was enough to beat out Aaron. Aaron had one of the weaker games. Pat Mahomes, pedestrian 21.62. Even Jefferson was kind of held in check, kind of 15.3. T. Higgins 11 points. Saquon Barkley, I guess, is right around that average, 18.4. But look at the rest. Kyron Williams only 1.2. Conklin only 1.9. Palmer 9.5, which is okay. Tyler Bass 8.3, and the Buffalo D 5.8. Not a good game, and I don't know. It's going to be a tricky one, especially because for Aaron, he has a couple of guys who are on front runners. Yeah, you got Pat Mahomes and Justin Jefferson. What happens down in the playoffs when they perhaps sit those guys? So that's going to be a big question mark coming down Again, we shortened the season by one, so we're only going up to week 17. So there's going to be some protection against that, but they're definitely going to be careful with these guys. Off the bench, Geno Smith had a big game, 27.98 for Aaron. And then for Mike B, McKenzie 6.9, Tagovailoa 18.6, Woods only 1.1, McKinnon 12.8, and Elijah Moore only 2.8. And then for Aaron's bench, Geno Smith was the better one, was the better quarterback today. And Goddard is still out, so he's the tight end that he's going to need to have healthy coming back. Tyler Boyd only had 8, Zay Jones 2.6, kind of a letdown after a big week last week. Detroit held him in check, and Duvernay had 10.10. So again, not that critical of a game playoff wise, but it was interesting to see as part of a pattern this week of seeing lower seeds knock off higher seeds. Next up, Automatic versus Captain Morgs. So Darren had the lowest score of the week, and Morgan was pretty respectable. This is critical more for Darren. I think Morgan is automatically out of the playoffs at this point. Darren is just trying to stay afloat. If he loses one more, he goes to 7-7 and becomes part of that multi-tie. Derek Carr only had 18.6. Mike Evans tonight had 7.9. Juju Smith-Schuster had 5. Ezekiel Elliott had a decent 18.3. Mostert only 4.7. Hurst only 2.2. Cooper only 6. Tucker only 4.1. New England 4.4. So just pretty sad scores across the board with the exception of Elliott. And then off the bench, Claypool only had 4.3, and Van Jefferson 4.9, and Mason only 5.9. And should he make the playoffs, then maybe Beckham will be a guy who can make the noise, but he's got to hang on to keep from sliding any further. And then for Morgan, Josh Allen only had 20.92. AJ Brown had a huge game, 27.9. Thielen had a bad game, 3.7. Taylor had a meh kind of game, 13.9. Part of that crazy Sunday night game where Indiana was going toe-to-toe. Indianapolis was going toe-to-toe with Dallas until the very end, and Dallas just opened the floodgates. Here's a tough loss. Kenneth Walker got hurt. Only 3.9 and was out of the game. Firemouth only 9.1. Perrin has been one of the better pickups. I don't know how long you're going to be able to ride him because I don't know when Mixon comes back. Folk had only 5.4, Washington 18.2. And off your bench, Slayton 12, Gibson 8.8, Sutton nothing, Jerry Jeudy 8.5, Dak Prescott 19.8, and Snell 4.6. It was kind of rough hitching your wagon to the Denver receivers. We were expecting them to take a step up with Russell Wilson, but as we know now, that was a mistake, and everyone's paying. Anybody who is associated with Denver has been paying for that. Eric versus Richie, the most exciting game this evening, because this went down to the wire, and it was wild because when you were watching it early, it was like Richie was favored, and then Eric was favored, and then Richie was favored, and Eric was favored, and then there was like 2 more players on each side left for Monday night, and it was like, it was really close. So this is going to be a slugfest. It turned out to be a snore fest for a little while in the beginning of Monday night because I think Taysom Hill kind of gave him an early knockout punch with that touchdown, and that kind of put some separation between Richie and Eric, and then the game was slow until like the very last 5 minutes or so, and then it started to become interesting, and it came down to Tom Brady leading them down from down, I don't know, they were down big. They were down 13. He led them down 1 touchdown. He came back with another one. and he threw a touchdown pass to Godwin. And with that, for a brief moment, Richie took the lead and was going to win this game. Unfortunately, there was a holding call on the lineman. You can see it. It was a legit call. They called the touchdown back, 10-yard penalty. 2 plays later, touchdown to, who's this on Richie's bench? Rashad White. So he gets the 6 points. I don't know. Let's see. If you would have played him in place, if you flexed him in instead of someone else, yeah, then you would have had a win too. So tough break because of the way you played the game, and it went down to the wire. That touchdown going to White instead of Godwin secured the win for Eric, and it made a big deal for. It kind of keeps Eric safe. I think Eric is safe because even if he loses out, he'll be 7-6-1. That'll at least have him have a bump on. Well, it depends. There's a couple other scenarios that can bump him out, but that is one of the better. That tie makes a huge difference. But for Richie, he's in danger of falling into the muck of that 7-7 final spot. As far as who showed out, Eric had Joe Burrow, who had 33.64. Waddle, I think, got hurt. That's why he only had 1.4. Deontay Johnson had 8.5. Nick Chubb, only 9.7. Dalvin Cook, 17.3, which is okay. Taysom Hill, 12.74. Again, he was the one who gave the final points towards the end to help him win, as well as Suckup, who only had 4.6. Jerry Jacobs continues to be a monster, 23.6. San Francisco D was huge, 18.7. Off the bench, a better play would have been Devontae Smith, who had 18.7. Michael Sanders had 11.8. Lazard only 9.2. Deshaun Watson, so he was the guy. After so long, is finally coming back. He only had 8.24. I don't know. The season is lost, right? So this is basically an early preseason for him, just to get him reps and get them head start on next year. Hillard only 2.7 and Jalen Warren only 3.0. Richie, pretty good pickup taking Goff with Murray on a bye. He balled out and had 24.7. Chris Godwin, so that was the one who was gonna have 6+ points, whatever. 6 points for the touchdown and whatever point fraction for the yardage and the catch, the point for the catch. That would have given the win, but it didn't happen. It was called back. Christian Kirk, 13.4, which is okay. Damian Pierce, starting to show signs of life after that 2-week lull. David Montgomery, 16.1. Cole Kmet, pretty good game, 10.2. Alvin Kamara, oh man, 5.9. So part of an ugly game, and he didn't really do anything. Graham Gano only 10.5, and the Dallas D was huge, especially with that end of the game, getting that 20.8. That kind of gave him some separation early before coming into Monday. Off the bench, McLaurin had a big game, 10.5. Again, we already mentioned Rashad White, 15.8, the hero of the game today. Travis Etienne only 8.4, and Jamar Chase 13.2. We'll talk about the playoffs in a bit, but this was a critical game for our playoff seeding. And then the final one, Mia Milo versus Mediocre Minions. This turned out to be a blowout. I was kind of concerned. I thought it was going to be a lot closer, and actually Jeremy was favored to win this, but it was just collectively a lot of big games for people on my side and a lot of duds for Jeremy on his side. I don't know if that'll keep up, but I just caught him on a bad week. For me, I went with Trevor Lawrence instead of Justin Fields because of the injury. Early on, it looked like a bad play because Fields ran 50 yards for a touchdown, but it ended up being a little bit closer, so I didn't worry too much about that. Amon-Ra St. Brown is balling out too, 29.2. DK Metcalf, a solid 22.7. Tony Pollard, 24.8. He looks like the better of the two Dallas running backs this year. DeAndre Swift, I think he's back. He was no injury report, and he had volume. So he was able to get over 100 scrimmage yards, 20.5. Dalton Schultz only 4.3. There's kind of like a tight end committee there that makes it a little bit hard to value him. Jamal Williams, again, that volume went way down because of DeAndre Swift and more carries from Justin Jackson, but he was able to get a touchdown, giving him some value, 10.6. Myers only 10.7. I regret dropping Badgley now. I could have been all lines. Baltimore D only 6.8. They're kind of fading fast. Rare to mention Justin Fields, and the only other guys was George Pickens, who had 0.7, and Bam Knight from the Jets kind of makes all those other Jets running backs look bad. So that might be a pretty solid pickup for me late in the season. 15.8 by Zonovan Knight. For Jeremy, Justin Herbert had only 21.4. Stephon Diggs had a pretty good game early on in Thursday, 18.7. Chris Olave had kind of it was part of that ugly game tonight. He was on the wrong end of it at the end of the game, so only at 8.5. This was the big surprise, and I think what really made the difference was Derrick Henry, only 5.9. So this week, Gary can go about winning the trade, at least for now. Philadelphia just shut him down, and then we're playing with a lead. So at that point, you're trying to pass to catch up. Isaiah Pacheco has continued to be a solid solid guy to use later in the season. 21.24. T.J. Hawkinson only had 5.3. Cordero Patterson only 7.1. McPherson 11.7. Miami D 6.8. Off the bench, Singletary had 12.4, which was okay. Would have been better than Derrick Henry, but who's starting Singletary over Henry? Michael Pittman had 2.6. Tyler Lockett was Jeremy's best receiver today with 23.3, but he left all those points on the bench. But I don't think it would have helped because the margin was far too great. Yeah, so that's the recaps for the week. And I didn't mention it last week, but our regular season is almost over. I think next week is the final game. I don't really have a standing. Like if you look at, week 15 is the playoffs already. Yeah, week 15 is playoffs already. So next week, it's all decided by these matchups. If you look at the standings right now, it hasn't updated, I don't think. It hasn't updated. So, let me just draw it in. Richie goes to, mediocre minions is now 9-4. Riding with Mahomes is 8-5. Look at all these guys we lost. Only Eric won. 8, 4-1. Richie is now 7-6. Darren is now 7-6. Mike L is now 7-6. Gary actually moves up to. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's not right. Let's erase that. Eraser. Mike is now 6-7. Gary is 7-6. Mia Milo is 6-1. James is 6-7. And then the rest are they bump up, but they're not making the playoffs, right? They're automatically eliminated since I think last week. Actually, I'm sorry. I was giving Brad a win, but he's not winning. Brad is 4-9. So you see this from 4 to 9. We're all fighting for those last 3 spots, 4, 5, and 6. Actually, you know what? 7, 5, 1. Yeah, no. I guess Eric is safe with that win. So if I'm looking at next week's scores, put this on this side. Milo versus Richie. This is a super critical game because Richie needs to win Richie needs to win to avoid getting into that multi-team tie. I need to win. It's critical that I win because if I don't, then I think I'm out of the playoffs. If I'm in, I have a good chance to make it. This game is inconsequential. Prince Llama versus Brad. This game is a big deal for Darren. He has to win, otherwise he gets stuck into that mess, that 500 mess. Mike is out. Morgan is out, and Jeremy is already in the playoffs. Mike L needs to win to force that 500 mess. James needs to win to force that 500 mess. So the winner of that will make it the playoffs. The loser guarantee is out. And then this one too, Gary has to win to avoid that mess, and Aaron is already in the playoffs. So if you look at the guys who are 7 and 6, that's 3 of them, right? If they all win out, if Gary, Richie, and Darren win out, they make the playoffs. That's the final 3, right? But if they all lose, and then James wins, and then Mike wins, then everybody is all 7 and 7, and then it depends on whoever has the highest points, whoever fielded the most points. So it's very, very complicated. I'm the only one who's kind of a wild card because if I lose, I'm out. If I win, I leapfrog everyone else who is in that 7 and 7 mess because I only have 6 losses by virtue of the tie. So it is a very, very tricky, and it's gonna go down to the wire. We don't know who's gonna win, so you gotta bring your best game to week 14, and then immediately after the following week, there's playoffs. So may the best guys win. You guys had fun up to this point. We have one more game, and it's the end of the regular season, and we'll start the playoffs. All right, so that's it. See you later. Bye-bye.